So, guys, when you look at monetary sector, it's a very important chapter because this is a chapter that will talk about money supply, money demand, and this chapter will help us understand how, when you look at, like interest rate determination, how does interest rate determination happen? A lot of MCQs, and I say a lot means a lot of MCQs. You will see every year from this chapter. The examiners kind of like a favorite chapter for MCQs because it has got a lot of different sort of small discussions that are attached to it. So once we get done with this chapter, this is going to be a really important sort of framework that we will understand for the policies, also changing sort of various variables like interest rate or, for example, like GDP and all that can be done through our work of monetary sector. But before I talk about monetary sector, I just want to talk about a few players in the market. So, we have government, right? But then government has what we call a central bank. And the central bank is kind of like an independent sort of department. The role of central bank is to manage, you know, commercial banks. Among many other roles, central bank has it also has a role to manage commercial banks. Commercial banks include uh, SCB, your MCB, your HBL, all of this Standard Chartered Bank, and all these are all commercial banks, right? Commercial central bank also has a lot of other roles to play. They also sometimes are looking into like managing your currency, managing interest rates, and so on and so forth, right? So whenever we say government, government isn't really actively involved in managing the functions of the financial functions. It's the central bank, which is a government institution, but which works independently. Just like Supreme Court is an independent organization which has autonomy. It's like also like the same thing with central bank. Okay, so guys, when we talk about like monetary sector, in monetary sector, I'm going to look at right now your money supply and money demand. And money supply plus money demand will help us understand how we will determine interest rates in an economy. So our goal today will be to look at money supply or begin to look at money supply today, and then tomorrow we'll look at we'll wrap this up and talk about money demand also alongside money supply. So what is money supply? When you look at money supply, guys, money supply is basically what we call total amount of uh, quantity of money that is in circulation. Now, in a modern economy, money is not looked at notes and coins alone, but we have what we call narrow measures of money as well as broad measures of money. So, what are narrow measures of money? We say narrow measure of money is basically all those items that are spent directly or that can be spent directly, such as cash and current account balances. So, for example, if you want to go to, let's say, a particular store, let's say you want to go to any grocery store and you want to sort of buy a good, you can give them cash and you can get the goods, right? Similarly, if you want to make a bigger transactions, you can even go with your checkbook, and some places may accept a check. For example, I can pay my travel tickets, or I can pay for my car, or I can pay for bigger ticket items through even my current account check. So we say this: the narrow money is defined as basically what we call those sort of that money which is very what we call liquid in nature. Liquid means easily converted into cash. Okay. On the other hand, when you look at broad money by definition basically means deposits. It's deposits and saving accounts. So deposit and saving accounts are basically those that cannot be spent directly, but can nevertheless be converted into cash. And so basically, when we say broad money, it includes also those deposits that are not liquid. A good example of those deposits that are not liquid are basically your savings deposits or your time deposits. Now, if, for example, let's say, guys, I've given my money in a 3 year time deposit, which means that I've told the bank that I'm going to put your money in this account for 3 years and I'm not going to touch it. The bank in return will give me a larger interest rate or a higher interest rate than when they give it, then they give what they give on a saving account. But if I take money out of that, if you're holding funds in a saving account or if you're holding for a time deposit, when you take money out and you do not give any prior notice, then there could be a possibility of you to not earn interest, or you may also need to, you know, um, pay some penalty for that, which means it's not completely what we call free to use that cash. Makes sense? It's not costless to use that cash. Makes sense? So what we say is that when with the definition of money includes narrow money, which is completely liquid amount of cash, and that is basically what we call money that is mainly medium of exchange. Okay, so that's narrow money, which is basically your current account plus cash. But then there is also sometimes money includes broad definition, which includes narrow plus more, which means you have deposits which are time and saving. And this means also it includes basically those things which are also not only means of medium of exchange, but also what we call a store of value. Remember, store of value means you can earn interest out of them. So the idea goes this, that in a modern economy, money is not only cash and current account, but it also includes your savings account, and it also includes your um, time deposits. Any questions, guys, before we move on? Anyone, any questions before we move on? This is the last page. This is the first page, in fact. Go to the last slide. Last slide, there was no last slide. This was the only slide, Habib. We just talked about money. Oh, I mean, okay, okay, okay. You mean to say this thing? Is that what you're talking about? You have a question? Anyone has a question about this or anything? Okay. Anyone have any question before we move on? Okay, guys. So one last thing: narrow money is basically used as a means of exchange, while broad money may include items that are also store of value. That's why it's called a broad definition, a larger definition of money. Broader definition of money basically means money includes not only things like, for example, your notes and coins, but more. That's why it's called broader definition. And so it includes everything which is narrow plus more. Gold is not money. Makes sense? Gold is not money. If you go to gold, take your gold and you say, hey, I want to buy cookies from the gold biscuits, so they may not accept it. They will like, go get a cash because we don't know what the quality of your gold is. What are you selling us? Uh, and cryptocurrency basically is an alternative now, but countries don't include that in their money supply. They don't control cryptocurrency, so they can't include that in their supply. And that's why they don't like cryptocurrency, because of the fact that they can't control it. Make sense? Okay, guys, now I want to move on to talk about what we call sources of money supply. How can we change money supply? Well, we can change money supply through many methods. Like before taking economics, I used to think that government prints more money and money supply goes up, but the government doesn't really need to. I mean, a central bank doesn't really need to print money, honestly speaking, because they have ways where without even printing money, they can change money supply. So I want to explain that idea of how do we change money supply, and that change in money supply can result in a change in your what you call how can you change money supply without printing money. So the first one, guys, is through commercial banks lending. So whenever there is a, that's right, number one, whenever there is an increase in bank lending, like commercial banks lending, we will see money supply to go up. Okay, how does that happen? Let's talk about that, guys. Basically what happens is this: let's say if there is a bank number one, let's say this is your SCB, Standard Chartered Bank, and let's say I deposit $100 in it. Okay, so I deposit $100. This is what I call a T account. Those of you who don't accounting may know what T account is, but I'm going to put all my liabilities on this side. I'm going to put all my assets on this side. Okay, so let's say somebody gives a bank number one a deposit of $100. The reason why this $100 is a liability is because I have to return. If I'm bank number one, I have to return $100 to this guy whenever he asks for it. So what I do with this money, guys? What do I do with this deposit? Anyone? I give that as a loan. No, I don't invest it. As a bank, I'm not supposed to invest people's money. I can only give that as a loan. Bank's role is to take deposit and give loans. And in that taking deposits and giving loans, they make money because a depositor, they may give you like 5%, but when they give you money as a loan, they may make 8% or 10%. And as a result, they may pocket 5%. Makes sense. So, guys, can they give the whole amount of $100 as a loan? And the answer is no. Central bank, which is the regulator, the central bank says that you need to keep some amount as reserve, and they say you need to reserve this amount because what if tomorrow Ali comes to the bank and say I need $100, and if you or I need $10 of my $100, and if you don't have that money, then you will be called a bankrupt bank. So what you need to do is you need to keep a reserve, and they can come up with a reserve ratio. They tell all the banks that like you have to keep a reserve ratio. For example, they may say keep 10% as reserve. Okay, so my reserve ratio is 10%, which means the loan will be 90 and the reserve will be 100, 10% of 100, which is again 10, which means this is how my $100 will be spent. So a deposit of $100, $10 the bank kept as a reserve so that tomorrow if you come and ask for money, at least they have this money, and the 90 is given as a loan. Now, what happens to this 90 is an important thing to understand. This 90 will go into the economy. Let's say this goes to Tajwar, and Tajwar then spends this on current goods. Okay, so Tajwar took a loan of 90, bought things from Karan, and now Karan is holding the 90. And let's say Karan goes to bank number two, which is his bank, and now deposit that 90. Okay, which would mean now the loan will be in this bank, lending will be of $81, and the reserve will be $9. As a result of this will be 90 and this will be 90 again. So now there is a reserve from 9, which means the single sort of amount that we gave as a loan of 90 created another loan of 81. So you have 90 plus 81. Are you all with me? But this process doesn't end here, right? Why? Because this 81 will go back into the economy when it's being lent, and then 81 will come back again, possibly to bank number three with 81's 90% would be 72.9, and so if we keep on adding, you will realize that the total deposits will be equal to, or rather I should say this, that the change in money supply will be equal to, because every deposit is will be equal to 100 plus 90 plus 81 plus 72 will be equal to $1,000. So a single deposit of $100 can make money supply to change by $1,000, of which 900 will be your deposits and $100 will be your reserves. Make sense? So we will वो लोन लेके स्पेंड भी तो कर सकता है. Yes. So even if you say, think of this way, ultimately what we believe is just that this model is true. You're right about this. What if he doesn't deposit? What if no one deposits that money? That's true. Then they are lying in your account. But what we assume is this, that in this model we're assuming this, that whoever gets the money will ultimately put it in a bank where they can get some interest out of it. So you need to not make your cash lie in your hands, but you could definitely earn interest out of it. Now, again, this is a number, and in reality, you can say, but not everything is being deposited, right? Which is true. If not everything is deposit, but a fraction is deposit, you still have this idea that whenever there is lending happening and deposits are coming to the account, they will cause money supply to go up. So if, for example, I spent, I didn't deposit 81, I deposit 70. Okay, and then the rest I spent somewhere else, but then that someone else will put that money. Hopefully that 20 or whatever 11 that you didn't spend, you spend on something else. That someone else will then put that money in the bank if you don't put the money in the bank. So that idea is this, that this amount will. So why did I come up with 1,000? Because I know the formula. The formula is that initial deposit times money multiplier, and I'm going to talk about money multiplier in 1 minute, is equal to your change in money supply. So if your initial deposit is like 100, your money multiplier is simply 1 over reserve ratio. So 1 over 10% is going to be, what is 1 over 10%? 10. 100 times 10, which means your change in money supply would be $100. You guys get that? I'm sorry, 100 times $1,000. Are you all with me? Does that make sense? Of this $1,000, guys, what are deposits? 10% of that is reserve, which means $100 is your reserve. And your deposits are changing by $900. Are you all with me? Does that make sense? Do you get this idea that a single 100 goes, keeps on going into the economy and keeps on increasing money supply? We'll talk about bonds in a little while. Bonds is a bit complicated. We want to talk about that. Save the bonds for tomorrow. But are we happy with the $900 discussion, guys? Do we get the idea? Now, guys, how does central bank? What's the 900? We say 900 is the your deposits. Okay, the deposits plus your reserves will be your change in money supply. Are we good? Does that make sense? Now, guys, I want to talk about one thing. How do you control money supply? How do we change money supply? Right? So, how do we change money supply? And the answer is this: that if I increase, if I increase your, sorry guys, I'm so sorry. If I increase your reserve ratio from 10% to 20%. Okay, if I increase your reserve ratio from 10% to 20%, then money multiplier की value क्या होती है? What's the value of money multiplier? Money multiplier is 1 over 20%, which is going to be 5. And that would mean now the change in money supply will only be 5 times $100 or $500. So the idea goes that if you are just a minute, guys, just give me 1 second. So guys, sorry. So I'm saying this, that if the government wants to change the if the government wants to basically control money supply, they can increase reserve ratio, because reserve ratio is basically amount of money that they are making banks to not lend. Because whenever the lending happens, lending will make more deposits, and more deposit means more money supply. The more reserve ratio will be, the lower lending will be, and the lower lending will be, the lower money supply will be. So that's the idea. What is money multiplier? Money multiplier is basically a function of reserve ratio, because if your reserve ratio is really, really high, money multiplier will be low, and that basically means your money supply will be increasing slowly. You get it? So how does central bank control your money supply? And the answer is by controlling your reserve ratio. Makes sense? And reserve ratio uh, is a tool through which the government controls money supply. Makes sense, guys? Any questions? Do you get the idea? So I want to show you. A question which is going to be useful for us to understand the idea. Just give me 1 minute, guys. Show you this. No, Tajwa, 500 is the change in money supply now. 500 is change in money supply now. With the reserve ratio being different. Let me show you this exam question.
Huh?
Somebody just said something. So look at this one. A closed economy has a banking system consisting of a single bank. The bank operates with a cash ratio of 10%. Now, the reason why they said closed economy was because they don't want the cash to leave economy. Okay, the cash stays within the economy. Okay. So the reserve ratio is 10%, which means my money multiplier will be 1 over 10% or 10, right? Customers depositing $20,000, which means initial deposit times money multiplier is your change in money supply. So initial deposit is 20K, 20,000 times money multiplier is 10. So this will become what, guys? This will become change in money supply will be equal to $200,000. Isn't that true? Do you all agree? Does that make sense, guys? Assuming subsequent net withdrawals of cash from banking systems are zero, what is the maximum amount of loans that the bank can create? So, guys, loans are basically deposits. How much deposits or loans can the bank create? C. Good job, Isha. Why? Because 180,000 plus 20,000 is the reserve, which means 200,000 will be like this. So, this is your reserve. The bank will keep the bank will keep 20,000 as reserve. That's reserve ratio is 10%, and 180,000 as loans. Loans or new deposits. Okay, you get it? Does that make sense? Are we good? Is that fine, guys? Do we get the idea? So 180K is the answer. Any question, guys? Talal, this is the working. This is that if the reserve ratio is 10%, then money multiplier will be 1 over 10% or 10. Now, that would mean if you deposit 20,000, that will result in money supply to increase by 200,000. Why 20,000 times 10 is 200,000. Now, of 200,000, how much are you keeping in the bank as reserve, which means you cannot lend that money? And the answer is reserve is 20,000. Why? Because 200,000 cut to 10% is 20,000. The rest is basically money that you could lend out, which means 200,000 minus 20,000, 180,000 is the lending out money or new deposits that can be created. Make sense? Are we good? Karan, why do you want to go to the last slide? I may need to close the file. I need to go. That's going to be taking a lot of time. So you have to wait for 2 minutes. You want to copy something? Okay. Are we happy with this? If everyone is happy with this, then only I'll go to the other slide, to the older slide. Are we good to move on? I need to close this file, and that's why I'm asking you guys. Do we have any questions, guys? Okay, I'm closing this and go back to the. Karan, I might have lost that file. It wasn't saved. Haris. Okay.